Hello, this is our diversity project by Gabriella Jones, Brooklyn Leaks, Gabriella Ortiz, Ian O'Rourke, and Mari Raja. Today we will be discussing between these two scientists, Orville Huntington and Barry Paul. Introduction to DEI. For starters, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a great environment for others with different backgrounds of all sorts to come together to feel accepted, appreciated, understood. This allows others to feel a deeper sense of equality and opportunity for individuals to thrive in. It's important to understand the importance that DEI has had on our society. Without working with one another to fight against these barriers between different groups of people, we would lack understanding of societal changes, creativity, and learning experience. We will be talking about Barry Paul. He is well known for his foundings in humanology and genetics. This area of science is mainly directed towards blood disorders, and there's a variety of ways that he contributed to that field of science. Barry Paul background. Barry Paul was born August 29th, 1962 in Bruma. He immigrated to the US with his parents in 1969. A quote Barry Paul said was, "America gave us a second chance to build a new life." He grew up in California and attended public schools and university in Cali, and he completed his undergraduate degree at UC Berkeley. He then wrote and published his first scientific papers on synthesis of bacterial siderophores. He got his MD/PhD at UCLA with Elizabeth Neufeld. Neufeld. He died December 28, 2017 at age 56. Barry Paul background part 2. For his medical residency, he moved to the pediatric hematology and oncology department at Boston Children's Hospital at Harvard Medical School. He showed a special interest in exploring intracellular iron trafficking and hematabolism, with their relevance to human diseases. His rigorous studies on red cell developmental biology resulted in the identification of a number of novel genes and their functions. This includes cell disorders like anemia and many other. Um, I just cannot pronounce those, so I will not be pronouncing them. But you see what they are on the PowerPoint.
Barry Paul's contributions and accomplishments. Paul contributed to the world of biology and oncology by discovering novel genes and their functions that aided in the understanding of red blood cell disorders. He devoted his career to the study of developmental biology of red blood cell differentiation. His team was the first to use zebrafish for analyzing genes responsible for human diseases, notable for his role in discovering a new gene in humans that contributes to the production of hemoglobin. He combined multiple disciplines in his research. 87.88% was of genes, 74.24% in cell biology, and 63.64% in genetics. By combining multiple disciplines, it allows for more thorough understanding of a subject as a whole and creates overall better research. Barry Paul's contributions and accomplishment, part two. So, Paul introduced the zebrafish as an animal model to investigate human blood cell disorders. Blood cell formation is quite similar between zebrafish and higher vertebrates, such as humans. Since zebrafish are very accessible, it makes them the perfect specimen for hematology research. He identified a number of genes. Some of them are cyberlastic anemia, erythropoietic protoporphyria, and diamond blackfan anemia. So I have a YouTube video from the Sanger Institute. This is zebrafish modeling human disease. Basically, the video explains how zebrafish and humans are similar and how zebrafish can be used to discover various diseases for hematology research.
We sequenced the zebrafish genome to a very high standard so that we could really know what the direct comparisons between human genes and zebrafish genes are. I know it seems like an odd choice to study zebrafish, especially when looking at human disease genes. Zebrafish are very easy to maintain in the lab in large numbers. The embryos are essentially transparent, and that means that you can see every cell as the embryos develop. The genome is extremely similar. So 70% of human genes have a zebrafish counterpart. And if you look at the disease genes in human, what we find is that 84% of disease genes in human have a zebrafish counterpart. So for example, the greatest cause of muscular dystrophy in humans are mutations in a gene called dystrophin. And zebrafish have a dystrophin gene. It's very similar. Mutations in the zebrafish dystrophin gene give zebrafish muscular dystrophy as well.
84% of the genes in zebrafish are similar to the genes that are in the human genome. So the idea would be to use a model organism such as zebrafish to try and work out exactly what those genes do. We're then able to use methods in the lab where we can make changes within these genes and identify the changes by using high throughput sequencing. This then allows you to make families which contain changes within certain genes, specific genes, and then look at the consequences of the loss of function of those genes within those families. And this allows you, in a systematic way, to go through all the genes in the genome and work out what a loss of function in each gene would do to the zebrafish.
It's kind of like if you have a car, for example, and you go in and you systematically alter each part of the car, one part at a time, and ask, does the car still work? And if it doesn't work, how is it not working? We're trying to do that with zebrafish. Because the zebrafish genes are so similar to human genes, our understanding of human biology will be enhanced by this.
So far, we have identified variations in close to 40% of zebrafish genes, and we have described the effects of those variations for about 1,200 genes. Once we've identified the variations in the zebrafish genes, we look at the changes that are caused by those variations. We describe those changes and put the descriptions into a database. We then hope that clinicians can go in, compare those descriptions to the symptoms they find in their patients, and that might help them to identify the gene that is underlying the disease that the patient is showing.
All of the mutations that we've created are available both from the US and Europe in stock centres. So researchers all around the world can get hold of the individual fish and do their own experiments from the zebrafish models that we've created.
Our study is very much in the tradition of previous zebrafish screens, but we have developed a method that now allows us to look at multiple variations and their consequences at the same time. And that very much speeds up the process and makes it also more cost effective.
We developed this zebrafish mutation resource funded by the Wellcome Trust to help scientists and doctors understand how gene variation affects inheritance of disease and susceptibility to disease. So for example, we can construct a mutation in zebrafish that's very similar to the human mutation and then use the zebrafish as a tool for screening for new drugs. The goal of biomedical research in general is to improve human health, and we hope to improve human health by studying zebrafish genes.
Okay, let's get into the challenges that Barry Paul faced. So, Paul was a refugee from Burma. He came to the United States in 1969. His family hoped to lead a better life here, like most immigrants, with more opportunity and success for their children's lives. There were many different challenges that were faced whenever Paul faced when moving to the U.S. Being in a completely different country, you experience many struggles to get where you need to be. His family worked hard to provide for his education all throughout his life. And this is a quote that I found by Barry Paul in his experience with immigration. And it reads, even with their education, it was like Nazi Germany. First come loss of right to own property, then citizenship, then right to teach at a university the next year. It comes in increments, so people keep hoping perhaps next year would be better. Then it is too late to leave. By 1969, we waited 2 years for permission to leave, which disqualified you from working for civil service. And we landed in US with US $30 per person and 1 suitcase of clothes per person. Whatever wealth we had was left behind. America gave us a real second chance to build a new life.
So Barry Paul has left a very impactful mark, mainly on representing his homeland of Burma. He's done this while researching for his country, because during not good. Okay, restarting now. Impacts Paul had on society. Barry Paul has left quite an impactful mark. He's done this by representing his homeland of Burma. So in 1948, while Barry was doing his research, there was an ongoing conflict between Myanmar. This was an ethnic armed groups fighting against Myanmar's armed forces, creating an ongoing civil war. Barry Paul must have lived with so much fear until his family had moved to the US in 1969. To think of what Paul has gone through to become a citizen in the United States has taken a lot of courage and bravery. With all that he's accomplished, graduating with an undergraduate degree from a prestigious US college at UC Berkeley, only coming to America as a refugee with 1 suitcase, it shows that your background doesn't reflect who you are as a person, just that your courage and determination show through as your true character. One quote that I found really stood out to me was from his friend Jerry Kaplan. He will also be remembered for his modesty, generosity, and most of all, his sweetness of character. Hearing this and the impact he had left behind on his friends just shows how amazing Barry Paul has done with his research, his work, and just being an overall good person to be around, even though all of the hard things he must have struggled to get here. Next, we have the impact Paul had on the scientific community. Paul had a very significant impact in lots of different ways in the scientific community. The first and foremost being how he used zebrafish to identify mutations that caused anemia. He also went on to identify that the molecular bias of adult and chronic GM2 gangliosidosis, which is also known as Tay-Sachs disease. From this experience, it led to different discoveries and implications of human blood disorders. Since Paul was solely committed to understanding different blood disorders and he would then be recognized with many prestigious awards, such as the William Randolph Hearst Young Investigator Award back in 2002. He also received the Basil O'Connor Scholar Award from the March of Dimes Foundation and the Young Investigator President's Award from the International Bioiron Society in 2005. With this, Dr. Paul was also elected the American Society for Clinical Investigation in 2008. This shows how large of an impact that Paul had on the scientific community, because his good friend Jerry Kaplan is back again with another quote of, Barry will rightfully be remembered for his scientific discoveries and the rigor and importance of his work. This just sums up how hardworking and impactful Barry's work went on to do for the scientific world.
The second scientist that we worked on is Orville Huntington, who focuses on wildlife biology and climate change. Orville Huntington's background. Orville Huntington was born and raised in Huslia, Alaska, and is of Athabascan Native Alaskan descent. The picture to the right shows where Huslia, Alaska is located, and it also shows the city of Fairbanks, which is where he received his Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Biology. He grew up living a traditional subsistence lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and trapping according to the seasons. And subsistence refers to the use, harvest, and sharing of wild and renewable resources by Native Alaskans. Subsistence is something that is very important to their culture and practices. Interesting facts about his hometown of Huslia. It is translated to river with a steep bank because the city is on a river. Only 315 people live there. Some Athabascans that live in Huslia speak Russian because Russian explorers visited them in 1843. And families would often travel with the animals they would hunt until the late 1950s, when roadways and a health clinic were built, allowing families to live in Huslia year-round and not be forced to live a nomadic lifestyle. Research interests and focus. Huntington's research focus has been on subsistence fishing and agricultural practices in northern Alaska that promote sustainable agricultural practices and combat climate change. The focus of his research is how Indigenous and Western scientific practices work together and how they can be used for the benefit of the environment. Orville Huntington uses research and looks into things from thousands of years ago from natives to learn from them. His research interests are the direct and indirect impacts of subsistence use on fish, animals, and plants of northern ecosystems. The evaluation of current policy and regulations and their effects on the subsistence methods and means of harvesting these resources. Orville works exclusively with professors, nonprofit organizations, and colleges regarding the issue of climate change impacts and the sustainability of rural communities. He has also often spoken before Senate hearings and House hearings on his research findings and to share his knowledge on specific topics. Research interests and focus continued. Orville is committed to protecting the rights of Native people to continue to live their subsistence lifestyle and preserve the cultural beliefs associated with that way of life. Orville Huntington always wants to make sure that his people will be allowed to live their way of life, and that the laws of Alaska allow them to live that way of life without being impeded on and without any Athabascans impeding on any of the laws. He is also dedicated to working closely with young people to promote the values of traditional Native elders combined with contemporary Western knowledge. Orville does not want the younger generation to lose the values that he grew up on, and he feels that his values combined with Western knowledge may be the factor that solves these issues of climate change and overhunting and overfishing that many Alaskans have to deal with. Orville also discusses the changes occurring in wildlife populations and in the environment that are happening in Huslia. Orville notices changes in populations in a lot of the articles that he has written, and a lot of his focus is working with the hunter-gatherers of the area and figuring out what is going on with these populations and how he can effectively make sure that they are thriving and able to be hunted by the Alaskans efficiently. The picture at the bottom of the page shows land ownership in Alaska, and the yellow portion, which represents native land, is a lot smaller than the state and federal lands. So Orville Huntington works very hard to make sure that Native Americans can be heard and that their opinions can be understood in Alaska, without being ignored by the majority.
So Orville currently sits on the Alaska Native Science Commission as a chair. He also is part of the Alaska Native Steering Committee, the Alaska Native Fund Conservation Program, EPA Tribal Science Council, and the State of Alaska Board of Fisheries. Orville is very highly decorated and was recently appointed to sit on the National Native American Fish and Wildlife Society Board of Directors. Since Orville is so committed to the education and outreach projects to help non-Alaskans understand culture and subsistence lifestyle of his people, he has made sure to make his voice and his work known with all these leadership positions he shares. He uses this power and positions to share his knowledge and experience to solve numerous agriculture and environmental issues. Some other accomplishments and contributions that Huntington has done was he has been the lead or co-contributing author on several publications that focus on the relationship between traditional and indigenous knowledge between Western science. So the focus of the several articles is normally on climate change adaptations and the way that indigenous expertise and spiritual ethical practices can contribute to our understanding of ecosystems. In addition to his research, it offers an interdisciplinary perspective that speaks to the intersections of tribal knowledge, spiritual traditions, and wildlife management regulations.
Challenges Orville Huntington has faced. As a member of the Native Alaskan community, he has often wrote about many importance of Native science being combined with Western knowledge. But creating a functional balance between two has been not an easy task for him because nobody's going to agree. So Orville worked hard to protect the rights of the Native people, as they should because they were there first, and upholding cultural beliefs that guide their way and their community to state and federal laws, expectations, of course, because if not, then they're going to get, booted out. Being a Native himself, Huntington knows his first-hand struggles of his ideas in workplaces little to zero recognition because, let's face it, it's America. So Orville has testified in public, hearing that State House and State Senate, and he served professional boards and spoken on several panels, which is great for him being Native since Natives don't really get anything. Next, how do I go to the next one? Okay. Huntington's impact of the science community. After that, and he loves nature. He built a gap between conventional ecological knowledge and science. And Orville Huntington has advanced culturally sensitive conversation, enhanced his research, which helped him support inclusive indigenous people, aka natives, in scientific decision making, which has encouraged lots of corporation of diversity. You know what I'm saying? It's really good. Next. Huntington, his impact on society. This is great because natives don't really get any recognition. So his leadership, education, and had a long lasting effect on society, which is great because he's defending his indigenous rights and culture and reservation because he worked with groups with the Taana Chiefs. I don't know how to pronounce that. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he was in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which has advanced sustainably for resource management in Alaska. And his participation in educational programs also shows his dedication to empowering young natives, which is great because there's not much encourageness in education for natives. So Huntington's contributions have shaped more and more sustainable future and encourage positive change, which is great. Next. And then this is all our works cited. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you to the diversity group. Thank you. Acknowledgements to my professor, my TA, LA, whatever, and my classmates and my group. Stop sharing.